Okay, here's two leaves. One is a northern red oak on the left, and the other is a white oak on the right. Both of these leaves were found probably within 2 feet of each other on my property. Oak is a very prolific tree, and that's one of the reasons that we're going to talk about it today. Okay, so I'm walking around out here on my piece of property right now. Still got chainsaws in the background. I apologize about that. Like I said, they're cordon wood next property over from mine. But this tree right here, I've looked up and I've identified it by its leaves, by its bark, that it's a white oak. And I want the inner bark of this tree. Now, I'm going to look around on the ground a little bit here too, just to verify everything. You know, eyesight's not too good as I'm getting on in age, but those look like white oak leaves to me from up high. So I'm going to look on the ground, and I look around and I see, you know, there's quite a few sycamore leaves on the ground here, but there's also a great many white oak leaves, okay? And these white oak leaves are all over the ground here, right in front of this tree, right around this tree. And that's the majority of what's here. So that tells me this is probably a white oak. So what I want really on this thing is I want the inner bark of this tree for medicinal use. So I'm going to pull out my axe, and all I really want is a piece of this inner bark. I don't want to kill the tree. So I'm just going to cut into it a little bit here, just like this. And that's what I'm looking for. That's a nice chunk of inner bark right there. Look at that. That's a beautiful chunk of inner bark. If I can get a couple pieces like that, throw in my backpack, take them back to my camp, this is what I would use for medicinal value. Another pretty good piece right there. Another piece attached right there, but it's still good. These inner bark shavings right here are really, really good stuff. This is the good medicine right here. Okay, so we got a pretty good pile of that inner bark from that white oak now. We'll take that back to camp and make a decoction out of that. We may combine it with something else. I'll decide when I get there, but we're going to make up some medicine. Okay, so we've got our white oak inner bark that we collected here now. These fine shavings are still wet, so I can't do this with these. They have to be dried out. But I can actually pulverize that into a powder with a makeshift mortar and pestle. And Matthew Wood talks about in his book of Herbal Wisdom, you can actually snort this stuff up your nose and it will clear heavy mucousy, sinusy type infections where you're having problems breathing through your nose, you're having a lot of sinus drainage into the back of your throat. That will take care of that. White oak bark has been used medicinally, basically as a staple for herbalists for a long, long period of time throughout the ages. It has a lot of good properties. Like we said, it's astringent. It's also very good because of that for diarrhea and even severe cases of dysentery and poisonings and things like that that are giving you diarrhea. If you take a decoction of this white oak bark, which means you boil it down more than one time to reduce it down and really get the powers that are in the herb into that water, and you drink it, it will take care of things like that. So you've been poisoned, or you've ate some bad food, or you've got some bad water, you've got a case of, you know, an issue where you're using the bathroom a lot, then it's time to cure that. And one thing that you can do if you think you've been poisoned is you can eat charcoal. It will make you immediately vomit, but it will line the stomach to kind of absorb some of those toxins, and then you can back that up with a decoction of white oak to astringently kind of close things up and kind of alleviate that diarrhea. Now, in a weak tea or infusion, which is what we're going to make today, we could take some of this fresh bark, put it into an infusion, strain it off, drink it or gargle it, and it's great for a sore throat. So it's a topical antiseptic, but it's also very good antiseptic internally around the mouth and throat. Any problems that you have with your mouth or throat internally, swelling, soreness, soreness of the gums, things like that. If you have any lesions or cold sores inside your mouth, all of those things can be taken care of with white oak bark. And because oak is so prolific in eastern woodlands, white oak is not hard to find, which makes it an ideal plant for this series on useful plants of the eastern woodlands. Okay, so we're getting ready to make a infusion of white oak bark so that we could gargle it for a sore throat situation. We can also use it for a topical antiseptic. But I always like to kind of include tips and tricks and things like that in these videos when I can. So what we're going to talk about today is we've only got one container, okay? A lot of times people don't have two metal containers. They don't have a pot. They don't have a nesting cup. This isn't even a fancy schmancy metal container. This is a World War II wide mouth canteen. The only modification I've made to it is I have cut the chain at the bottom and I've put a split ring in it like you'd use for a keychain. And the reason I did that was so that I could take that off of there and disconnect my lid when I wanted to put the whole thing in the fire. So all I have to do is take that split ring off, take my lid off and put it in the fire. Now, here's the thing. Now we can boil water with this, no problem. We can put it right on the fire, boil our water with it. It's not a problem. If we're going to make an infusion, we're going to add a bunch of bark, okay? Which is what we're going to do right now. And I'm going to put a bunch of bark in here. Now the question is going to be, once you've got this bark in here, somehow you're going to have to strain that bark before you gargle this liquid, or you're going to end up with a mouthful of bark. So we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. I'm also going to show you a quick and easy tip or trick to get your container off the fire when it's in the flame like that, if you don't have a multi-tool to grab it with. So stay with me. We'll let this thing get going here and we'll make our infusion, and then we'll get back to the tips and tricks. Okay, so our infusion's pretty much done now. I just need to pull it off and let it sit for a minute, maybe cover it with a rock. But I have to get this container off the fire, so here comes the tip or trick. What I've got here is I've got a piece of bank line. Okay, it's the same kind of bank line that I use for trapping. In fact, this is one of my snares. And all I've done is I've taken one of my toggle triggers and I've tied it off center with a clove hitch. And you can see it's pointed on both ends and it's tied off center just a little bit. You can move it over a little bit more, just like that. Now it's off center. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that string, drop it down inside my container, just like that, pull it straight up, and as long as it's wider than the shoulders, okay, I can take my container off the fire, set it to the side. Okay, had to readjust the camera for you for a minute there. I want to make sure you guys can see this. So now I've lifted up my container, okay, very easily like this, okay, and it's coming out. Now, because I tied that off center, all I need to do is take the long side of that, look down inside the container, take the long side, push it over to this side. So I've got my long side over here. Now the short side will toggle straight up. Very similar to what you would do if you were making a gorge type fish hook. And I can set that back down there and pull it to the other side, lift it up, set it down. Again, pull my short side toward me and it comes right out. Just gives me an easy way to lift my stuff in on and off the fire without having to use my bandana or my multi-tool or mess around. If I've only got the one container, doesn't have a bail on it, it's a very simple common man piece of equipment, probably cost 10 or 15 bucks at an Army surplus store or a gun show with the cover. Okay, so again, you just drop that down inside there off center and pull it straight up to lift it off the fire, set it back down, take your long side and pull it against the side so that the short side pops up and it comes right out. Roll it back up in your trapping kit for later on or when you've got to use it again, and we'll let this infusion cool down, and then I'll show you how you're going to strain it and drink it at the same time. Okay guys, so real quick, like in review, we're talking about oak. There's 90 species of oak in the US. Most are red or white oak. You can identify that by the color of the inner bark if you don't know the leaves. The white oak is what we're looking for medicinal purposes. Red oak for construction purposes. Also, white oak is better food than red oak. You don't have to leach the tannins out of it so much in the acorns to use them. We'll talk about that in just a second. It's astringent, it's antiseptic, uses medicinally, diarrhea, stiff decoction will help with diarrhea. Sore throat, we've made our infusion with the inner bark that we're going to use here in just a minute when I show you this other trick to alleviate a sore throat. And topically, it can be used also for an antiseptic. Anywhere around the mouth and throat area, it's good to gargle this stuff if you got a problem. Food, white oak acorns. Say that 3 times fast. White oak acorns, white oak acorns, white oak acorns. That worked pretty good. You can make mush, ash cakes, or flour out of that. So now what we're going to do is, we've got this medicinal tea that we need to drink, okay? And we are going to just take our cotton bandana or whatever we have on, in this case a cotton scarf, and put it over the top of it and drink it right through that, and that's how we're going to strain it. Just like that. Now I don't have to worry about straining this off into a second container. I only have one container. I'll use the one container I got the best I can and strain it as I drink it. Gargle it, swish it around my mouth. Drinking it's not going to hurt anything either. Doesn't even really taste nasty. It's not bad. So this has been our segment on useful medicinal trees of the Eastern Woodlands, white oak, or oak in general. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. I thank you very much for your views. I thank you very much for your support. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thank you.